Hey guys, welcome to Ben Wrenchin. My name's Ben and today I'm wrenching on my 94 Chevy K1500. I'm changing out the tie rods on the front suspension. Once I get that done, I can get an alignment, and at the same time I'm going to get new wheels on this truck. These wheels are looking pretty old and I'm not a huge fan of the saw blade wheels, and I got a set of rally wheels. I love the way these look. I had them on the first truck that I had, so I wanted to recreate the look I had on that truck. I got a set of center caps on eBay. I got the lug nuts with the external threads for the plastic caps and also the plastic caps. I got both of those on Amazon, and I'm so ready to update the look of the wheels on this truck. So to do that, I got to take it to the tire shop, but I need to get an alignment anyway. I just did a bunch of front suspension work on this truck, and the last thing that I need to do is the tie rods. So I'm going to get those done, change out the shocks while I'm in there, and then take this to the tire shop, get the alignment done, and get my new rally wheels put on. So I'm excited to get this going. I'm going to get started by getting the wheel off, and we'll start with the driver's side tie rod. Alright, I got it jacked up on a jack stand with the tire under the truck and the rear wheels chalked. The tie rod is right here. It's got two ends. This is the outer tie rod, there's the inner tie rod, and then this coupler that holds them together. You can change out one or the other. I would always go ahead and change out all the parts, especially when they're as old and rusty as this one is. So it's got two 18mm nuts. There's one on this side and one on this side here. This one's a little difficult to get to, but we can get in there. So I'm going to take the whole thing off and then match the new one with the length of the old one. That's going to get us close to our current alignment, and then I'll take it in and get an alignment done. So I'm going to start with this nut on the inner tie rod. So I was hoping I could get a short 18mm socket on there and then use my breaker bar to break it loose, because I don't have an 18mm wrench and I've never broken down and bought one. So it looks like that's on there pretty good. I'll try to loosen this up and see what happens. There we go, that wasn't too bad. So now that I've got that loose, I can use a 3/4 inch wrench. That's a little bit bigger than 18mm, but it won't strip the nut as long as you've already loosened it up. So I wanted to be able to use a wrench so that I could see the end of it to see when that starts spinning as I loosen this nut, and then I'll know when I need to start putting pressure on it. But luckily so far it is not turning on me. So maybe I can get this nut all the way off without having to jack up this tie rod, and I can get a little bit more swing if I go at it from the bottom. And there we go. I got it all the way off, which is great. So now I'll do the same with this outer bolt. It's also at 18mm. And there we go. So now I'm going to go back to this 3/4 wrench just so I can see that top post and see if it's turning with the nut. And it's not, so I lucked out on both of these. I did just do some suspension work and had this off, so that is likely the reason why this is not seized on there. If you have the post spinning with the nut, you can just put the jack under it, get some pressure on it, and then you'll be able to get this nut off. So this looks like it's going to be easier than I thought it was going to be. And so now I'll thread this nut back on a couple threads and hit it with a hammer, and then I can get the nut back off and get this tie rod out of here. Getting this one out is going to be a little more difficult. I'm going to put the nut back on and then see if I can use a pry bar to pry that out. So I've got the pry bar braced back here, and I'm going to see if that'll give me enough pressure to pop this out. I'm going to open my hand up like this and push so that if I slip, I'm not going to hit this. And I can also try just hitting this with a hammer. See if I can get this pry bar in here and wedge it out. With that nut only on a few threads, it's got a lip on the nut that I can get a point tipped punch in here. So I'll see if I can use this to get it out. And that thing is really in there. So I get some PB Blaster in there, let it soak in and hopefully loosen that up. And I can also heat it up and see if that helps. So I'm going to try to just put heat on this side of it. That way I don't end up melting that boot. If you're going to use heat to get a bolt or a nut out, the best to use is the yellow can, not the blue one. The yellow cans get hotter than the blue, so those are better, but I've still got this one, so I'm going to use it. And what I'm trying to do is expand that hole that it's in. I'm not necessarily trying to heat up the threads. And once it starts smoking, you know it's hot enough. Try some more PB Blaster. Try the pry bar again. And so at this point, it looks like it's going to be a lot of PB Blaster and heat over and over. And I can see that boot bubbling, so I know it's getting pretty hot. And I'll try the punch again. So now I think I'm definitely going to have to get a tie rod puller. I got this specialty tool at O'Reilly. It's a tie rod separator, part number 67029. It's on the Rent-A-Tool program. It's basically just like my pickle fork, except shaped exactly like I need for a tie rod. So I'll try this. So I'll use this tie rod separator and just get it in here, hit it on the end with a hammer, and I'll just keep hitting it until it separates. There we go. And there's the old tie rod. I'm gonna need to match the size of this with the new one, so I'm gonna put all those parts together, set it next to this, and make sure it looks the same. So this is all the parts I've got. I know that one of these is gonna go on each of them, and then one of each of these is gonna go on each of them. Each of these comes with a castle nut, and it comes with a cotter pin and a grease fitting. So that's nice. I got these from Detroit Axle. I've heard different opinions about Detroit Axle parts, so I thought I would try them and see what I think. As far as packaging goes, I think it's packaged really well. It's got this netting to protect the threads. I can say these do come pre-greased because this one, the boot was off of it in the package, and it does have some grease in there. So they do come pre-greased. Each of these has two different part numbers. ES2838 is the inner tie rod, and ES2836 is the outer tie rod. So I have these laid out correctly. This is the adjustment sleeve that goes in between them. So I'm going to thread each of these in there. There's a couple of ways that you can get these to the same size. You can count the number of turns that it takes to get each tie rod end into the adjustment sleeve. You can take your old ones out and count how many turns it takes to take those out, and try to match it up that way. Since I went with aftermarket parts, I don't really trust doing that. It's possible that there's a different number of threads on these, a lot of different things that can make these different, and so what I'm gonna do is just match up the overall length, and so I'll thread each of these in equally into the adjustment sleeve, make sure that the overall length matches, and that should be close enough. So the first thing I wanna do is tighten down each of these on the adjustment sleeve just a little bit so that it'll actually thread in there. The bolts on these adjustment sleeves are 1/2" bolts, and the nuts are 14 millimeters. Not really sure why that is, but I'm glad that they're different sizes so that I can use two different wrenches or sockets or whatever I'm going to use to tighten those down. So I'll get a 1/2" wrench on the bolt head and tighten down this nut with a 14 millimeter socket. And also tighten down this side, and that way I don't warp this adjustment sleeve. So I've got both sides pretty tight. I'm gonna go ahead and try to thread this in. One good thing to know is they do go in only one side. So if you're having trouble threading these in, try flipping them around, because I struggled with this for a while and then realized that if I flipped around the sleeve, both of these thread in really easily. So I don't know how that works, but now they're both real easy to turn. So what I'm gonna try to do is line up the sleeves and then turn the inner and outer tie rods until they match the old one. And I just gotta remember that this one is reverse threaded, so it feels like I'm loosening it, but I'm actually tightening it. And so that looks pretty close, maybe even one more turn.
What are you doing, Dad?
I'm putting this part together, and I've got this one matched up pretty well. I feel like if I go there, it's a little too far. Right there looks just right, and right there looks like not quite far enough. So I think that's good. I'm gonna move on to this one. And I'll just keep going until it looks like it matches exactly. And there we go, I think that's good. So that looks about as close as I'm gonna get. I'm really just trying to give a baseline for the alignment shop to be able to do a proper alignment, but I think that looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and tighten down these adjustment sleeve clamps. I'll try to get these in the same orientation with the sleeve opening in the same spot. And I'll try to get the bolts lined up in the same orientation they are on the old one. I'm just gonna tighten these down until they feel secure. And then I'll try to do the same with this one. So I'll tighten it down about like that. And I think that looks pretty good. And so setting these side by side, I've got these lined up perfectly. And it looks like these line up perfectly too. So I think that's gonna be close enough. So now all I need to do is get the grease fitting on the back of this inner tie rod. This does give you an easy way to tell which one's the inner and which one's the outer. The outer has a straight grease fitting, and the inner has an elbow grease fitting for easier access. So with that, I'm ready to get this installed. And so now I can just take this castle nut off the inner tie rod, slide it into place, and thread the nut back on. And then I can take the nut off the outer tie rod, line it up with the knuckle, get it lined up in there. These castle nuts are also 18 millimeters, so that's helpful. So I'll just tighten these down. I don't need to get them too tight because they're going to take them back off when they do the alignment. So I just got them tight, and then I'll turn them maybe a quarter turn with my breaker bar. And I'm getting impatient with my breaker bar, so I'm just going to use this 3/4 wrench and tighten this down until it feels secure. And I will turn this grease fitting so that it's facing out, and that'll make it easier to grease this. This one is a 9 millimeter, which is kind of a weird size, but I have these tiny wrenches and one of them is a 9 millimeter. So I'll link those in the description. They're cheap and they're awesome to have for stuff like this that you just never have a 9 millimeter wrench. I'll go ahead and turn this just a little bit more and get it to face just like that. I think that looks good. And the grease fitting on this outer tie rod is 7 millimeters. So I'll just go ahead and tighten this one down while I'm in here. Tiny wrenches are a solid investment. So with that, everything's good. I think everything's tightened down and it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the wheel back on, and then I'll do the same on the passenger side. Alright, and with that, I'm officially done with this project on the truck. So I can finally take it in for an alignment. I've got the new wheels and everything loaded up and ready to go. I can't wait to get those on here. That is the last time I'll have to put these saw blade wheels back on. So I'm going to take it in for an alignment and get the new wheels on, and I will show you guys what it looks like. Well, bummer. That didn't work. So I took these Raleigh wheels to the tire shop. They said that the powder coat is too thick on these and this center bore will not fit around the wheel hub. So that means I'm going to have to do a separate video on what I'm going to do to get those wheels onto this truck. And that's going to wrap up this video. So stay tuned for that if you want to see how I end up getting those wheels on this truck. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will catch you guys in the next video.